Welcome to the Interstice podcast, episode 14, one and all. Whether you're on Spotify, Apple iTunes, or tuning into the channel, I appreciate that you are here. Thanks to my supporters on Patreon who make this possible. If you would like to support me, links down below, all that good stuff. Now, it would usually be that I discuss a bunch of different topics in the first half, and then we go into question and answer in the second. But maybe, perhaps, as a result of getting these out a little more efficiently, I don't have so many emails this time. So we're going to focus, it's going to be a little more topic heavy this time. But if you do want to get your questions answered, and you almost certainly will because I'm getting these out more consistently now, write to me at davetrippin@gmail.com. That's down below in the description, or you can just listen back to that moment in the podcast. So I've had a lot going on, as I'm sure we all have in our lives in this last couple of weeks. And for me, the big topic that I will not stop referring to is my experience at the new school that I'm at. And it's really, really amazing. And as I mentioned in a previous episode, something that has made that particularly amazing for me so far is that for the first time ever, I have an advanced class that I'm teaching, and how after only 2 hours of spending time with these kids, how much of a connection I have. And it's given me pause to kind of wonder, what is that like, having that greater connection? Why is that greater connection? It's making me think of like Marvel movies. Why is whatever that woman is? Really funny guy, John Baptista? How do I say his name? Anyways, so the thing that I pinpointed immediately, which I was joking to my friend about why I could never enjoy teaching before, it's because the kids didn't know how to speak English, which is just, it's ridiculous because of course you need to teach them that. But I'd be lying if I said that there wasn't obviously an ease of rapport when somebody is more able to readily communicate with you. And because these kids are in an advanced class, they're able to do so. I know some of them lived abroad for like hyper privacy reasons. I don't even say where they lived, but let's suffice it to say that they lived abroad. And as a result, like these kids who blow my mind, they live abroad for like 3 months and they come back and they're speaking as I do. And they're like, yeah, I just lived abroad for a little while. So I spoke the language. And I'm thinking, I have lived here for 7 years and I can speak Japanese, but not like you are. And you did it for 3 months. Perhaps that has to do with the plasticity of their minds. Being so young, they're able to pick things up quicker. There's some good science behind this, more than I am aware of at this point. But I've really enjoyed them being able to communicate more with me more easily, and we can get to more interesting subjects because, well, it's fun to teach someone can I or I can or something like some basic grammar. Once you're past that basic grammar, you're having more fun. You're into discussional topics, interests, all the while learning, developing your ability to write. But on a broader, you can apply it to so many more interesting topics at that point. And that's something that I'm really, really enjoying so far. And it dawned on me, another reason that stuck out as I kind of considered, again, why is it? It's not just that they speak English, because I've had good relationships with kids in the past who are at a far lower level of English, obviously, than these kids. So what is it in the rapport? What is it that we're able to communicate now that we are able to do so at a higher level that I'm enjoying? And I know what it is. So where in the past I could teach kids content being the kind of academic portion of the lessons, so a grammatical structure, vocabulary. But what's lacking in that, what's lacking in me feeling totally fulfilled with what I'm doing there, is that I am not able to teach them anything beyond the academic content. And I've very quickly been able to do that more so in these classes. And so to give you some sort of context, what do you mean something beyond the academic content? Well, for this particular focus that we're doing in the first unit, these kids are learning about, the topic that we're focusing on is career. It's how to get a job and a career. And then there's all these grammatical and writing details that are then connected to that concept. But that is the concept that we're dealing with. Now, this is a concept that is very near and dear to me, like creating a career. How do you choose your job? Finally, the life experience I have that can serve as a warning. Don't do what I did. No, I'm quite happy. It's actually useful. And so I got to start off this lesson that I was doing with them today, where I think that it should, if you want to impress on a young mind some kind of fascination with a good job and an interest in that, you shouldn't ask them, what do you want to be? Ask them, what do you want to do? Or what do you like doing? So that's how I kind of eased our way into this topic. We started with, I showed them my guitar and I said, I like to play guitar. And I said why I like to play guitar. And I said when I started playing guitar. So the 3 reasons. And then we did, there's this awesome, I'm becoming an incredible e-teacher, given the state of things right now, where I was able to give them homework, assign homework that they were able to do online, live, that I could then look at as they responded to these questions and these prompts. And then we got a discussion going about why did they like to do that thing that they like to do. And my point to them was these seemingly non-job related interests that they have that are simply things that they enjoy doing. Well, any of them could be applied to a job, because if you think a little more deeply about them, they are applicable. But I think when kids consider a job, they don't consider the things that they want to do. They only consider the job, and that job seems so far beyond them because they go hyper specific. They think, oh, well, if I want to be a clinical psychologist, I have to learn about human psychology. I don't even know if I have that interest yet. That's not something I want to do. Whereas one of the answers from the girls in my class was, I like to talk to people. And her answer with the why was, I want to understand them better. And it was, again, it's just like, oh, the feels. this like the emerging intellect coming out of these kids. And I told her, you know, with that kind of like caring for people, there's a million things that you could do with that. And I told her about like clinical psychology is one of them. Another girl was interested in collecting stationery. I was like, that's kind of cool. Where that could be something entrepreneurial, where you so understand product and you so love that field that you want to connect everyone with the best stationery that they could possibly have. But start from that, start from your interests, and then let that guide you to a job. And then the reason that we got to discuss later on was how a lot of these jobs that people might pick out, aside from the hyper traditional that I think will go through different evolutions, but always still be there. For example, a doctor. I think a doctor in some shape or another, at least for another century, we'll have doctors, although more and more that's probably going to be automated. It's going to be handed off to AIs. You probably like a machine, a man surgery, a man, a female, or a man or a woman carrying out a surgery. Madness. Like, how could we trust ourselves to such inexact operations? You know, that's what people will look back on. I won't go on too far of a technological rant here, but people will look back on surgeries being carried out by humans as absolutely barbaric. But provided we don't blow up the earth, I think that we actually do have some time yet still remaining that that's the case. But before I completely ruin myself with a tangent here, the idea being that many of the jobs, just like they told me back in the day, and it totally came true, many of the jobs that you might want to do when it comes time for you to graduate from university, they won't exist until you are graduating from university. So is the job landscape right now. And it's only the accelerating rate at which jobs are dropping out of the market and being reborn in some other new form. You look at what's going on with economies right now as they try and adapt their current energy structures over to new energy sources. You look at automation, not just automation, I should say, AI in driving. So truck drivers. I mean, not like it couldn't be an aspiration. Not a lot of kids are like, I want to drive a truck. But maybe if you were, that job's going to be gone real soon. So making this point to them that it's better to be guided by your interests, because as well, you'll realize, and I think it's fundamentally important, even if you were to make a lot of money, the way that you make a lot of money is by having some interest that you so enjoy, that you become so incredible at it, that coincidentally, you end up making a lot of money. But if you go chasing money, then you'll be really dissatisfied. You'll sacrifice everything for it, and it won't be an interest that you have necessarily, except for, let's wax philosophical even a little bit more here, unless you love that. Unless the thing you like that's actually your thing, you're like, I just love to see the number go up. So those people exist. Let's not bar them out of the equation. But for the most part, the way in which you orient your success is to have that thing in which you are passionate about, and then that coincidentally just so happens to make you rich. For example, I don't think Terry Pratchett, writing the Discworld series, I don't think he ever cared if it was going to make him world famous multimillionaire. He just loves to write pithy, brilliant, comedic fantasy. And it so happens that he became like synonymous with like some of the best fiction ever written. Not that Einstein was ever incredibly wealthy. He more sort of survived like a rock star, where just for the fact that he was so popular, he had access to whatever he wanted. But because he was interested in his science, it then allowed him to have the rest of his life looked after. So that was a lot of fun. And then as well, I tried to get them thinking about how when we came to this point in the book, it was something we were to listen. It was a listening exercise where these different people are giving their opinions on what it is that a business will be looking for as it employs you. And of course, they say in education, trainability, how hard you're willing to work, great cog in the machine sort of values that they're going to have if they hire you. But then I tried to carefully turn this on its head. Again, it's like the gotcha teacher, trying to do some of the Dead Poet Society life here nowadays, where I asked them, I posed the question slightly different. I said, what's important when you go looking for a job? When you look at a business yourself, what can you offer to them? And the kids kind of mirrored what was said already. They said that, well, I think that I should work hard. And another one of them repeated that. And then another girl, I didn't want to press her. She was a little bit shy. She's lovely, lovely girl, very shy. It's endearing. But then I turned it around and I said to her and to them, all of them, that you should just as much consider how do you view this job? Because if you go into something, again, that you're not passionate about, that you see no upwards mobility through, you could waste years at a place trying to appease that job, perhaps appease people who you could never make happy. And what would it all be for? If you can fail at something that seems like you don't like it, why not fail at something that you love? So turning that on its head, maybe I could have said that more concisely, essentially to not only look at what a business would ask of you, but what you can reasonably ask of a business, because I think that there should be reciprocity there in terms of what you're getting from them. And this is, I don't want to even call it ideal. This isn't in an ideal world. This isn't a world in which we should strive for, because I can sense people immediately when I say that kind of thing about a business, they would say that that's a luxury, that a lot of people just got to live, and you don't get to dictate to a business the sort of environment that you want to be in. No, there are situations where you got to make tough choices, and it's more about survival than it is about having your ideal work situation. And are there beanbag chairs to relax in at break time when you have your coffee? But I don't think that it's so much of a stretch that we should ask more of our workplaces. Not so much that we feel entitled, but that we, as somebody who would do respect-worthy work, deserve to be respected. I think that's a world worth fighting for. That's a world worth living in as much as we possibly could, however long it takes to get there. So I really, really have enjoyed that I could teach them content beyond the academic, something to do with like a value system, something that can, I mean, they may not remember like the best note-taking method in the world. When they move on, we talked about good note-taking today, but I think something that will stick with them is having personal value and the sort of way that they search for a job that fulfills them. And since I can finally communicate that, it's incredibly fulfilling to me because it's a discussional class. I can do this. I can, as we're discussing like better note-taking and how to get a job, I can insert some of my my own thoughts regarding my own experience. And I really, really enjoy that. Another thing that I wanted to talk about, and this is cool. This was sparked by a subscriber actually who left a comment on the video I'd uploaded most recently about why I still live in Japan. And he offered an interesting perspective. Like, I really do try not to passively look at comments. It's easy when you skim to miss what it is that people are saying to you sometimes, or you kind of like fill in the blanks. And then when you look again, you realize that, oh, I should have been more thorough. They were communicating this. And his point was that developing relationships, healthy relationships, is very important wherever you've gone, and that will lead to fond memories of that place, wherever it may be, and whenever you may move on from that place. I thought, that's great. That's granted. That's a given. That's something I didn't need to be told. But then, when I looked a little closer at what he was saying, he was referring not only to personal relationships, but he made the point of having a relationship with your surroundings. And that's so true. When I thought a little bit more on it, how I think in terms of building blocks to creating a life worth living, an environment in which you enjoy spending time, the fundamental building block to that is usually, for most personality types, your social connections that you have. And it's incredible when those social connections are really humming along and they're good and you like the people that you're around, how good life can be even at that level. But I've really appreciated, since I'm happy most places, have come from a rural place, distances don't bother me so much, but moving to this new location that I'm in now, where I'm in closer proximity to basically everything that I do, everything I have an interest in, I'm very quickly, I feel, developing a positive relationship with the environment, more so than I had in the previous, and where the people were great for the most part in my previous employee. But now where I found that the people are wonderful at this new place that I'm at, but then the surroundings are really like, I can check that box off as well. I'm really appreciating that like next level of contentedness, tranquility that you get when that happens. It can be and I like these simple things. For example, I have now, I got one of these snazzy watches from my friend that records my steps, which is really cool. So it does encourage you to be a little bit more active. I'm already active. I like going out, like being physical, being in nature, but it does encourage me to, I want to get a few more steps. That would be cool. And so I've gone for a couple walks so far, not so many, but a couple walks to the nearby convenience store. And the walk along that route is way closer than I've ever had, way closer in proximity than I've ever been before to a convenience store, so even more convenient. And the walk is overhung by all these beautiful cherry trees that at first were in blossom a couple weeks ago and now have started to change to the green leafiness that they become once the blossoms fall off of the tree. A really enjoyable walk. The traffic isn't so busy, and I really, really like that. Prior to this, by like some time before things have entered the state that they are currently, going to the gym or going to the onsen, it's so much closer now, and I enjoy it so much that I can go and not be totally inconvenienced by like a 40-minute drive, or have to plan so carefully that like I'm going to finish this at this time, and then I'm going to head out here at this time, and so on and so forth. The amount of preempting anything that I do has now been minimized, and that's important for a person that's trying to get a fair deal done in a day. For example, set up for podcasts, or record, or write something down in terms of next video discussion, whatever it may be, plan for the next lessons that I have. Massively convenient for me now, the general proximity of everything around me. And it's really impressed upon me how important what the subscriber had pointed out, that your relationships with your physical environment are so important. And again, because it's immaterial, it was a weird thought for me to think like a relationship with my shower, a relationship with my room. But when I see these things improved and taking stock of them, like his comment made me, it was a far more different feeling I had than where I had previously lived, and I would say better. And I talk about the general surroundings, going for a walk, the proximity of things out in the city. But this is true of my home. For example, just like the way that, for those who are actually watching this video now, the way that I've been able to set up the podcast. I got my lights set up here. The table like swings around. I got lots of room. I got this nice thing here. Having a dedicated studio room, what happiness that has brought me in such a short period of time. Whereas before I was like shifting a couch around, like all these different things that I had to do was incredible. Not that my shower wasn't bad before, but with the space I have in my shower now, I've got this onsen seat that I can like chill in there and like do the full Japanese relaxed shower. These little things add up and add up and add up, and are all the better when I would say when you take the time to notice them. It's easy to be so distracted by our day-to-day lives that we don't appreciate the things in our home. We don't know what it is that makes us happy or irritates us unless we take stock of them. But as you're kind of forced to do when you move, so I was naturally doing it a little bit when I moved here and assessing, what do I think of this room compared to the previous room? What do I think of, my commute? What do I think of all these different physical relationships that I have? But then brought into such focus by the comment that was left by my subscribers. So perhaps think about that for yourself. Like, not always can we change our environment, but it's another thing where, like, if your job sucks, try and change your job. If your home sucks, try and change your home. If your neighborhood sucks, try and move. If your country sucks, leave the country if you can. Again, everyone's dealing with a different situation. I don't want to come off ever sounding tone deaf to the fact that a lot of necessity moves life. So sometimes these things we have taken stock of, but we're not able to change because they're driven by necessity, not our blindness to them. We're actually acutely aware of them, but we cannot do anything to change them given our circumstances. Returning to the job, to talk about that again, other things that I've been noticing, that I've been enjoying. My boss, I've noted very quickly. Well, first I should say, in the past, I've had good bosses. Here and there. Some have been horrible. Some have been better. I've been working since I was like, how old would I have been? I think I was probably about 15 or 14 when I had my first like summer job, something like that. And so that's quite a time to say whether your bosses are good or bad. I've had a mixed bag. But so let's talk first about in Japan, most recently. I wouldn't say my boss, the guy who was like one step down from who would be considered my boss, who would make the decisions whether I was like kept or, say, for example, if they fired me. I really liked him. I actually think he had a good heart. I know that some people would not share that opinion that I was with, but I did like him. But necessarily, we worked in different schools. That was the setup. Somebody was assigned to this school and another person is assigned to this school, and everybody's got a different place that they're doing their work. That's just the way it is. But in this private school, as I've mentioned in a podcast previous to this, they have a whole oral communications department, which is a subsection of the English department. And this oral communications department is staffed by over nearly a dozen foreign teachers who are responsible for oral communications. Like, there is some serious, serious dedication to language acquisition in this school. It's quite impressive. But now, because of that, my boss and I, we share the same school. I can see him like 4 computers up from where I am. And so when he is passionate about his job, when he likes it, it more impacts me, because then I can feel that passion because it's in the same school as I am. And I really, really like that. It allows, like, I'm that kind of person. I absorb the energy in the room, and so I try and bring that to people as well. I'm trying to exude that kind of energy. But yeah, I think humans are, we're tuned into this to some degree, all of us, some more, some less. I guess it's a question of empathy, or how empathic you are. But it really is something that I tune into. And that's something I've really, really enjoyed at my work, and where at first I'd identified, oh, that's because my boss is a happy person, and my boss is also at the same school as me. I can see him. He's right there. But then, not only that, the grades in the school they'll have like one big massive homeroom, but then these grades, say for example, you're in the 2nd grade, you'll be then split off into different groups from that master homeroom to go and do different subjects that you have. So, for example, why this matters, even if there is one big grade 2, 2nd grade homeroom, there is the potential that I will share with other foreign teachers members of the same grade. So I'll have student numbers 1 to 10 from the 2nd grade. The next person has student numbers 11 to 20, and so on. And what this means is you get an even greater integration of collaborative work effort with these other teachers. And again, I share a grade with my boss. My boss also has 2nd grade, as I have 2nd grade. Now that means, since I've got 2nd grade and he's got 2nd grade, when we want to do things like assign homework, talk about a lesson plan, talk about, say, for example, a whole unit plan, we can do that. And we can really come together and share ideas that so immediately matter. And I really, really enjoy that. That's completely new to me. I've had in the past where we're covering similar units together, and then I could, like, through messages or something, say to one of my friends from the previous board of education I've worked for, what are you doing for this? What's your idea? And to cards on the table at that time, it was more them saying, I prepared this thing. And I say, oh, thank God. Thank you for lending that to me. Whereas now I'm taking a more active role. A lot more of it because, as if you follow along, but for those who don't, who wouldn't know this already, because I'm responsible for all the grading. You're a licensed teacher who individually teaches the class, does all the grading for the students, assigns homework, and then tests them. So there is a lot more to be done. And so working closely with someone to just balance that workload that you have is really, really important. And that brings me to my next topic, which I've thought is really, really cool, and is sort of what would you call it? It's not a sign of the times. It is it is a consequence of the times that we're having to do this. But I'm finding that it's really, really interesting and cool to see new e-teaching technology that I wouldn't have, first of all, I wouldn't have known so well about before, because I wasn't assigning homework. I wasn't grading anything in any serious respect. I wasn't creating tests, that kind of thing. Especially in the Shogakko. It's only this year in elementary school that now they're grading, but even then people won't be responsible for that grading, aside from like some hardcore groups that are doing a speech test, but even that's rare. Tangent. But back to this idea of e-teaching and the sort of stuff that I've observed and how cool it is to be a part of this and to see this kind of like emerging sector where I've talked already in this podcast about how jobs are changing, or I didn't say necessarily jobs are changing. What I focused on to begin with is that absolutely like totally new jobs are emerging, but just as interesting, I suppose I did talk about how things are changing, like with doctors, and how barbaric it would be in the future to consider a human actually physically operating on someone. Well, that evolution of medical science, you can see this evolution of teaching, and I've gotten a little more hands-on with this, of course, as a consequence of the times. And what I like about it is where usually when I look at e-teaching in the sort of ways that I saw it get implemented before, to me, it was anything that basically gets in the way, something that is obtrusive, something that disrupts flow, is a bad technology. It's like, it's like a Rube Goldberg machine. I think that's the name of it. But I've got to say, it's basically, if you can imagine, one of those machines that, this is when e-teaching is implemented poorly. It's where you're trying to accomplish handing a student a piece of paper, but instead e-teaching accomplishes this in a fantastically complex way where it takes several different things that you have to do, which eventually arrives at the student receiving the piece of paper. But why would you implement that e-teaching or e-method or like whatever sort of electronic technological way that you did that if just handing the student a piece of paper is easier? Why would you do that? It should be unobtrusive if you were going to implement something like this. And I really like that the stuff I've just recently started to use is that. It enables you to give more resources to the students, cut down on waste, and has a great workflow to it. So I can talk about this. There's no issue with privacy concerning the software that I used, but it's called Formative. I think they've quite brilliantly chosen their color scheme, color like pattern, branding to be something similar to Google's, where I was like, I think you want to be associated with Google. You want to like sync with them and be associated. So smart. But what Formative allows you to do is you can basically, it's incredible how like I say, all of these like, and Formative is competing with a bunch of other like homework assigning software, e-classroom softwares that exist. So it's like not the only one. What's amazing is this like explosion of these kind of things. I don't know how many years they've been around for. That's a cool topic to mine in itself. But basically within it, there's a million functions, but we'll just like break them down kind of one by one simply here. So you could create classes. You could then, within that class that you could create, you can enter all your students' names. You can assign them usernames. You can give them individual passwords. And then they don't actually have to use an email address. They can just, if you give them a classroom login code, which is generated whenever you create a classroom, you give them that code. And then if you give them their login name and password, they can log into that classroom. So once they're in the classroom, what they can do there is any sort of assignment that you've created, any sort of formative. So that's the kind of like jargon for an assignment, is a formative. So your assignment, they have like 30 different options for you, whether it were an essay, multiple choice, true or false. You can embed video. You can do anything. You can do anything with this. And you could deliver that to them in such a concise, simple, and easy way. It's not a Rube Goldberg machine where it does like 50 different functions to basically fill a cup of water. This is to the point, and it's a beautifully slick, minimal UI user interface that they have for it. And the thing that I really enjoyed, I was using it in my class today, was I could assign them homework, but I could also, if you want, assign them something to do live. So the kids are sitting there, we're doing Zoom, we're talking through Zoom, and I got my PowerPoint slide up for them to take a look at, presentation that we're going through. And I said, okay, so I want you guys to go to Formative, join, here's the lesson code. You'll just be guests for today. I'm totally just figuring out this software right now. It's not yet fully that I know everything about it. And so they join in. And then once they've joined there, it was like I said earlier in the podcast, I was talking about, what do you like to do? Why do you like to do it? When did you start? These 3 questions. As they write, their answers appear to me live. So it's like it's frictionless. It's like there wasn't even that something needs to be sent back and forth. It's all instantaneous right there for you to do. Removing the middleman of a send button or something. And they can work on something as though we were not in a virtual classroom. It's like I've handed them the piece of paper. In fact, I made them beforehand. They just got to type in 3 things to get access to it. They can do it live. And not only can I see them performing it live, I can provide feedback to them live. I can obviously speak to them about what it is that they've written there, but I can actually write in corrections for whatever it is that they're doing. So all of these elements coming together, I think, are so fascinating to look at how things will be as we progress and if we don't blow the planet up. Like, I'm thinking of 5G connectivity. Everyone has whatever size screen that they need, possibly 2. You'd have multiple screens. You have perfect input interfaces that you can use. You have 8K resolution on everything that you're doing. Perhaps perfectly secure, this might freak people out, but perfectly secure bio confirmation, so biometrics confirmation. So maybe all they need to do is like press their finger on the screen, or that's probably me making a Rube Goldberg machine. It probably is just easier that they can type in a code and then there's no biometrics saved from them. Don't make it a Rube Goldberg machine. So I love thinking where I can already see this now. I'm kind of blown away, like, oh, this is really cool. Like, what will then this become if this is already... I mean, it does feel a little inelegant. I'm lucky with my setup that I have like 2 monitors. So usually I have my PowerPoint up here and I've got my other screen here where I can see their faces, their bright-eyed, bushy-tailed faces. But not everybody even has that at home. That's why there's sort of a disparity between like what exactly every classroom is like. Some of them they're having to write these answers. I saw some of the kids, they had their computer, but the way that they were writing the answer so they didn't lose the video feed was on their phone. I was like, that's fine. That's still cool. But as these technologies evolve, and I guess it was the first time where usually when I've seen e-teaching, like I'm talking about, it's that word that I'm so fond of for the last 10 minutes. It's always a Rube Goldberg machine. It's like, why are we taking these extra steps to perform something which we can do presently with 1 step if we're in a classroom? It seems like unnecessarily complex. But when I was using this today, I was like, wow, this is actually really straightforward, smooth, frictionless, great design. Really, really cool design. And I can see how this would continue to evolve and be more and more useful. In addition to that, of course, there's like great collaborative, just like I think this exists in like Google Docs. You essentially have like collaborative partners that you can invite. So say I have a class that I share with someone, like I mentioned before, that we're both 2A, or we're both 2nd grade or 3rd grade. You can invite someone so they become like a shared editor. like you might get from a Google Drive. Can someone like just look at this link, or can they edit this link? And you can share classrooms, and so you can manage homework together, build projects together that you want to give to the kids. It's so cool. To me, it's like everything. I mean, that's why I talk about what do you like to do. The things that we like to do, I think, inevitably feel like an art to people who enjoy doing them. And it doesn't always make sense to those around them, but it is art to that person. You know, it could be the person who understands Magic cards so well that for them, watching the market of how there is greater rarity and less rarity for cards as new blocks come out and they make money off that, that's an art for them. And any sort of tool that they can use to better enable them to pursue that interest is like another paintbrush that they have access to. Just like for me, a better camera is what I would love to have access to for videography. For the Magic card collector, perhaps it's an application that records rarity of cards, and so they can track market value of them. But for a teacher, to me, this feels like the teacher's paintbrush. That's, isn't that just feels like a cool phrase. And that was the first time, like I'm now repeating, that I've ever seen these kind of technologies come around, and I've not thought that they weren't absolute garbage. So that was really, really cool. Now, like I said, I'll repeat now. If you want to get your questions answered here on the podcast, write to me, davetrippin@gmail.com. We only have two. We have two questions here compared to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 that we went through in the last. And that's fine. But if you want to get them answered, write to me there. All right. So this comes from Michael. Question for the podcast. I want to relocate to Japan from anywhere from 3 to 12 months. What would my visa options be if I weren't employed by a Japanese company? I can probably do remote work for an American company or freelance. I'm a computer engineer. Very cool. Or worst case, just spend some savings. I want to live in some foreign cities while I'm still young, but I imagine immigration is going to be an issue. Let's assume I don't want to work for a Japanese company with a regular 9-to-5 routine. Even if I could land one, I'm basically looking for a long-term tourist visa. Okay, this is not only a good question, this is a challenging question. So what would I say to this? What you could look at doing, basically, there are a couple options. I'm breaking them down in my head now. So depending on the amount of money that you have, you could register yourself as a business. And I've looked into this, kind of like just dip my toe in. A little bit more than dipping the toe, 2 toes. That you would essentially need about $50,000. Can't remember. That's probably US. Probably, I don't know. Roughly $50,000. That allows you to register a business. And if you register a business in Japan, then you can get a manager visa, which is awesome. And it's something like, I don't remember how exactly long that is viable for you. But it's viable for a really long time. The one place where it gets sticky is that if you're going to do that, you need to have like proof of revenue. So if you are a business, well, a business has got to bring in money. So if you came here and you created, I suppose, like you said, a software business, a computer engineering freelance software business, where I think it's something then as well, you need revenue of at least $10,000 a year. So if you were able to come in, register yourself as a software design business, software engineering business, you were working freelance for people, but I mean, that's a business, right? If you incorporate or whatever, then you would be able to do that. The question is, would you be able to make enough revenue to continue to have that visa working for you? Or would you, after call it a year or whatever it is, it comes tax time and you're a little shy of that, you have to look at the situation again. And I mean, it'd be cool in a sense, because I bet you could, because you've registered that business, that $50,000 that you have to have as like your float, your business float. I mean, you could turn that into basically where it is that you're going to live if you registered that as an office space, and then you would have to find, where you could register whatever domicile you had as an office space. But why couldn't that be your home? And then your home is your business, and you're getting tax write-offs for that, which is awesome. That's something I would consider, like scratch a little, look at that as a possibility. The other option that you have is that you could do something like, I will have talked about, by the time this comes out, I've been recording a lot of videos recently, so I'm like, which this one's already done. I talked about this, where there's certain jobs in Japan that you can do, get yourself a work visa with, and it would enable you to work minimally and then pursue some other interests that you have, be that anything. So if you wanted to travel, you could travel more. If you wanted to work on something that you built into a business, which is kind of the interest that I have, you could do that. And that example I would give, although I don't have the best ins for this, where people find these jobs yet, although I'm sure you could look around. You can become a minister and you can preside over weddings here in Japan. And that pays pretty good. For like 11 days of work, you could make between $2,500 and $3,000 a month. And think about it. $2,500 to $3,000 a month for 11 days of work a month. The work that you do in that day, pretty minimal. I mean, it's like you got to be there at the moment when they're going to give their vows, and you read like whatever piece of scripture that is relevant to them getting married. But it's not an exactly time-consuming gig, even on the day that you're present. So you can look into that as well. So those are the options that I would consider. The extended tourist visa is something, maybe one you could get here on a tourist visa, and then you could minimally register for, maybe get a visa sponsorship for like an English cafe, where, I mean, if you're a software engineer, sounds like you are, you probably have a degree. So anybody would likely be able to get you like a teacher's, call it like a arts humanities visa that would allow you to work here. So again, you actually have quite a number of options. And I've known people to come over who have done the like come over work tourist visa and then flipped that into having a more permanent sort of, not permanent residence like your permanent resident visa, but more like you are here not as a tourist, but living more continually. So that's something else that you have as an option. So that's a great question. Thank you very much, Michael, for writing in. I appreciate that. Michael here is one of the supporters on Patreon. So big ups to you, Michael. Thank you very much for the support. Okay, next, here we go. The second and final email we have for the podcast today. Okay, hi Dave. I hope this finds you well. I am, thank you. I'm Naveed from Pakistan. Currently have just started as an ALT with Borderlink and Shiga. I've been in Japan for over 1.5 years. Right on. I've been living in a small countryside island. That's kind of cool. We won't say that name. Working for a regional revitalization group, but my contract couldn't renew, so I had to find another job. Okay, started working in public schools. But I am not sure if I will be able to stay here, as I have a whole lot of friends and social life elsewhere, because we're all foreigners there. So I was just wondering, how could I get an ALT job, particularly in this place where you were originally from? I know all the ALTs working there, and they are all hired by JET, and I am not qualified enough to get hired by JET. So what would you recommend me to look for finding? Okay, well, one of the things that you wrote here immediately, that was the first thing that I was going to suggest, actually. You said, should I look on the BOE website? Yes. Because I won't live there with all my family, I don't think so I would stay in Japan. Okay. So I would do that. I would look on Board of Education websites, but then something else that you can do. So I currently work for a private school. You should also, you go into Google Maps and you look at this area that you're interested in, and you zoom in and you find all the schools, and there's going to be a lot of just call it like eikaiwa, just language schools. You're going to find a lot of private schools, and you look for those schools' websites, and on those websites, you'll see more job postings, or you'll be able to know which companies are present there. So for example, you might zoom in, you find a school, it's run by Altia. Oh, I can contact Altia now and tell them that I have a particular interest in working in said location. Oh, there's this private school. I can apply to this private school. If you look on their website and you find, whatever person, human resources that you would contact there, that you would be able to get a position working at that school. So all is not lost to you, Naveed. I would say, I'm thinking of Starseed from Our Lady Peace when I look at that name. Great band, great Canadian rock band. I miss them very much. One of my favorite bands growing up, truthfully, probably my favorite. They were like they were like pre-emo when I was listening to them. That word wasn't yet used, but when I think now, that's what they were. Less traditionally emo though, not so whiny, more rocky, but they had that feeling. So good. Anyways, tangent finished. Yeah, that's what I would suggest for you, Naveed. I would suggest zeroing in. BOE website, Google Maps, websites to the actual companies that are working there. And I think that this will result in a conclusion you so desire, which is what we're aiming for here on the podcast. So other considerations now, things going on in life. I have to kind of ballpark here because I made all my notes. You know what? I don't want to beat a dead horse when it's already done. So let's call it there. Save a few extra megabytes for the next upload that I do. Thanks very much, everybody, for tuning in. This was great. There was I made a few notes beforehand, and I felt passionately about those topics that we had today. If you did enjoy the podcast, here on the channel anyways, YouTube channel, please do give a like. Consider hitting that bell notification so as soon as a video is uploaded, you are notified. That goes a great ways to supporting me here on the channel. Write a comment below if you've had some kind of reflection on e-teaching, work environments, relationships that are immaterial. What are your thoughts concerning those? If you would consider supporting me on my Patreon, that would means the world to me, helps me grow. It's how I'm going to do this one day full time. Those who support me there already, a million thanks. I could never be more grateful to you. But for now, the clock has run out, and I'll catch you in the next one.